All right, guys. Today we're going to really examine two philosophers, two thinkers, maybe two scientists that will challenge conventional wisdom of the 19th century, or everything that was leading up to the 19th century. Now, the two guys we're going to talk about is going to be Karl Marx and Charles Darwin. Now, look, they're not really connected, but they will both challenge popular ideology and still have lasting impacts even today. Okay? So, the first guy we're going to talk about is Karl Marx. Now, of course, probably when you guys think of Karl Marx, you're going to connect him to either socialism or communism, and you're absolutely right, all right? Really, he's kind of the founder of the ideology that will become prevalent in Eastern Europe in the 19th century. Or even in Central Europe in the 20th century, and even Central Europe in the late 19th century. Okay, so look, very, very important guy. Now, in WAP, look, when it comes down to it, you don't have to know many books. Okay, definitely I would know Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, and then the other one you probably need to know is going to be the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. Okay, so let's get into Karl Marx, okay? First of all, what you need to understand is that Marx is going to develop a framework to analyze human history. Now, he's going to copy it off of other philosophers, but he's going to put his own spin on it. So he creates a framework on how to analyze human history, okay? And what he comes up with is that, look, by analyzing all of human history, inevitably, we are going to come up with a socialist society, okay? All right, now, and eventually that's going to happen, a revolution will happen, okay? Now, in 1848, while all of these revolutions are sweeping across Europe, some succeed, France, some don't, Austria, okay, Prussia, we're going to see that he is writing a very important book called The Communist Manifesto. Okay, or the Manifesto of the Communist Party. Now, in 1848, when he writes this, it doesn't set the world on fire. Okay, it's not like everybody the minute he writes is like, oh yeah, let's go on to this. It's going to take a while to become popular, but it will become popular. It will become influential. Now, the main purpose of the Communist Manifesto is that all workers throughout the world need to unite, okay? By grouping together, they become more powerful. So all workers need to unite regardless of where you live, regardless of nationality. So he's very much against nationalism. He says it's dangerous, okay? So he's not grouping people by nations or ethnicities. He's grouping people by your place in the economic society, okay? Now, really what he's striving for in socialism is a classless society. There are no haves and are no have-nots. Everybody's equal, and the workers control the means of production. Now, the means of production are the things that you need to make a product, okay? Whether it's raw goods, whether it's machines, okay, that's the means of production. Now, in capitalism, the entrepreneur owns the means of production. Okay, they're the ones that determine how much raw materials they're going to buy. They're the ones that, control the machines because they bought it. Okay, well, in socialism, there are no people who own the machines. The people own everything. Okay, now, you have to understand, Marx and his buddy Friedrich Engels, who helps write the Communist Manifesto, they're not like poor workers. They're actually sons of very rich business people, and they're formally educated in universities. Now, Marx is going to really base a lot of his work off the German philosopher Georg Hegel. Okay? Now, Hegel is actually pretty interesting in how he views the mind and how we come up with ideas. And I have it right here somewhere, okay? Hegel uses something called the dialectic. All right, now understanding the dialectic is important to understand how Marx comes to the idea of socialism and communism, okay? So, with the dialectic, you have the dominant idea, okay? You have the thesis. This is the dominant idea. Well, for every dominant idea, though, there's a challenge, and that's the antithesis. So you have the thesis and the antithesis, and they war it out. You go back and forth. You argue, you fight over it, and then you get something new, a synthesis. So, with a combination of the thesis and the antithesis, you get the synthesis. Now, of course, it's very much like a circle, because we're going to see that the synthesis will be the new idea, but eventually the synthesis becomes the new thesis, and then you have an antithesis to that, and then you have a new synthesis, and on and on and on. Okay? Well, with that being said, Marx, he is going to take the idea of the human mind and the way you come up with ideas and put it into social classes. Okay? So he said that really history is defined on who controls the means of production. Okay? He believes it's very much economically defined. He who has the means of production is going to be the ones that are in charge. Okay? So, you know, your economic lot in life determines your political status, determines your social status. Okay? And of course, that is going to continually change. All right? Now, with these classes, okay, he says that you have a dominant economic class and a contending economic class. And these two groups will fight back and forth until you get something new. Now, really, the big example he uses in European history is culminating with the French Revolution. You know, in the Middle Ages, you had the aristocracy. Those are the guys that controlled all the economic means of production in Europe. They are the ones that said, this is what we're going to produce, this is how we're going to produce it. Well, in the Middle Ages, and then up until, you know, through the Enlightenment, and I guess since 1789, you had the emergence of the bourgeoisie class. You had the emergence of those merchants who were also making money and also wanted power. Well, the aristocracy will be challenged by the bourgeoisie, and we see through the French Revolution, we start to see this new social class that is a mixture of the two. So there had been a change that has taken place. Well, now in the 19th century, it's not a fight between the aristocracy and the bourgeoisie. Now it's a fight between this new business aristocracy called the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the worker. Okay, people who typically don't have means to income producing land. These guys are at the mercy of the bourgeoisie. The only thing they control is their labor. Okay, so what Marx is proposing is that eventually, yes, the bourgeoisie are going to fight with the proletariat. Okay, they will fight, and we see that there's still struggles with this today. Okay, now also keep in mind, he said that there's something new that is going to emerge. Remember, the bourgeoisie is the thesis, the proletariat's the antithesis, and then they're going to get something new when they clash. All right, and like I said, that new thing will be a classless society. Okay. Also, I'd write this down too. Marx understood, and you have to understand, in the 19th century, you don't have classes like economics. Everybody's still trying to figure this stuff out of, like, you know, why we have periods of prosperity, why we have periods of depression. Okay? They haven't figured out economic cycles yet. Okay? Well, what Marx said, he's like, look, when you have these cycles of economic prosperity, but then economic collapse, the economic collapse is when these two forces are gonna fight. Okay? All right? So, you know, when you start to close factories or lower wages, this is when they fight, and this is when you're going to get something new. You're gonna get a new synthesis. Okay? Now, we're going to talk more about Marx a little bit later, especially as we get further on, and well, I guess we're not going to get to the 20th century with communism, but we will talk about him a little bit more later. Now, two other things. Marx, not a fan of imperialism, Okay, we're going to talk about in a second how Europe is going all over the globe in the late 19th century and starting to go into Africa, into Asia. Okay, well, he said that really the reason people are becoming imperialistic is for capitalistic motives. The reason that Europeans are going in and trying to dominate an Asian culture, an African culture, is because of economic motives, because of capitalism, your desire to sell more product. Okay, also, Marx challenges the ideas of nationalism. And remember, the reason he's challenging the ideas of nationalism is because he doesn't see people as like, you're a Frenchman, you're an Englishman, you're a German, you're a Russian. He sees people as like you're the proletariat or the bourgeoisie. You're either the business owner that, has the advantage, has the means of production, or you're a part of the proletariat that doesn't. So he said, regardless of what you look like or what language you speak, most people are the proletariat, so we need to get together. Don't be fooled by romantic visions of nationalism, all right? Because all that is doing is dividing up the proletariat, which makes them weaker, it arguably makes Marx weaker, okay? Now, Marx will not be able to unite the proletariat, okay? But that doesn't mean that in the 19th century, and especially in the 20th century, that his ideas won't become more popular. And we're going to see that, okay? All right, now, I'm going to speak a little bit more on this next guy before I change the video. The next guy I really want to talk about is Charles Darwin, okay? Now, most of y'all probably know Charles Darwin as like, oh, yeah, he's the, man came from monkeys. And you're probably right, okay? Definitely he had some very, very controversial ideas, okay? And what Darwin wanted to show, his name's Charles Darwin, it's there somewhere, okay, is that he wanted to develop a framework on how natural history worked, okay? So he wanted to develop a framework on natural history, okay? And really what he's going to propose is called the theory of evolution, that more sophisticated species come from lower species through a development of evolution. You evolve to get better, okay? Now, in 1859, Darwin is going to publish a book called On the Origin of Species, okay? And really, with the origin of species, he's discussing his idea of evolution, okay? Now, it's evolution by natural selection. Okay, now let's talk about this. And I don't know if I have this up there. Yeah, I do, okay? Really, he gets this idea when he travels, and he travels all over the world, but he specifically travels to the Galapagos Islands. And he's observing the animal life in the Galapagos Islands. All right, now, with that being said, he sees some animals, especially birds, that are on the Galapagos Islands and on the mainland. But he notices very slight variations that they have. Okay? Now I'm going to pause the video here. I'm going to come back with part 2, and we're going to talk about why those slight variations are actually pretty important.